Welcome into the 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show. Happy NBA Draft Eve. I am Emily Proud, but today you can refer to me as Adam Silver because I will be playing NBA commish as we roll through Adam Finkelstein's final first round NBA mock draft. A reminder to hit that like button, share this with your friends, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Let's welcome in the man behind the mock, 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Adam Finkelstein. Adam, let's start with just some process questions before we dig into this mock draft. First off, what goes into the mock draft process?
So it's different things at different times of the year. For me, with this mock draft in particular, this was what I think they will do. So I started with whatever intel I could gather around the prospects of the teams themselves. And then when intel wasn't available, I just tried to make the best educated guess based on what I know that each team is looking for. So this wasn't necessarily what I would do, but certainly what I think these teams will do in this position.
Look at this class as a whole, and for the most part, it's been criticized for a lack of star power, right? So how much does that affect the mock draft process when there aren't the clear superstars that we might have seen in years past?
So I think in this class in particular, you're seeing a couple of different trends. The first one is that teams are looking for fit maybe earlier on in the process than they otherwise would have. Usually you just take the best player available. But in a class like this, when that differentiation isn't quite as significant, they might default to just saying, okay, what fits best with our roster? What are we best equipped to maximize in terms of an asset? That's the biggest thing, certainly. And then I think the second thing is it creates a lot of potential for trades. And this is very much a beauty is in the eye of the beholder draft. So while the common narrative is that this is a weak draft, I've talked to plenty of scouts and executives who there is sneaky value here.
All right, speaking of trades, you do have some mock trades in your draft. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get rolling. I have the picks here in my hand. Let's start with the first pick in the NBA draft belonging to the Atlanta Hawks. They select out of France forward Zachary Rizache.
Yeah, so basically what this comes down to is that 3 weeks ago, Alex Sarr was the presumed favorite to go #1 overall. He was the betting favorite in Vegas. He was probably the player most people considered to be the #1 overall prospect, but he declined to work out in Atlanta. Rizache is someone at 6'9" who fits a 3-and-D archetype. He shoots the ball very well from the three-point line. He's a positive defender. And I think right now the choice in Atlanta is between him and Klingon. And Atlanta's keeping everybody guessing, I think, perhaps to invite other teams to bid on this first pick. I think they would be open to moving it. And they are making everybody guess in hopes of attracting offers leading up to tomorrow night's pick.
With the second pick in the NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select out of France center Alex Sarr.
Yeah, so this is the pick here that Sarr and the Wizards, I think, probably orchestrated. As I said, Sarr was the betting favorite to go #1. He declined to work out for Atlanta, and that really paved the way for him to end up in Washington. Washington, although they weren't technically the worst team in the NBA last year, you could make the argument, a pretty sound argument, that they are the farthest away from being a contender. They maybe only have like 3 players on that roster who could be part of the long-term solution there. Sarr is someone who fits a need because he's a front court player and a defensive star potentially because he's a mobile 7-footer who can really get out, move his feet, defend ball screens in multiple ways, and also protect the rim. What we don't yet know is how well he's going to be able to build up his body and how much the offense is really going to come. Those are the question marks. And again, in this draft, everybody at the top of the draft would not be here in a typical year. I think in most years, these guys are between 5 through 10, and that's consistent with where I think Sarr would be in a normal year. But in this year, you could make the argument that Washington gets the best overall prospect at #2.
With the third pick in the NBA draft, we have a mock trade from Houston. So the Memphis Grizzlies are now on the clock, and they will select out of UConn center Donovan Klingon.
Yeah, so this is where the intel gets really, really consistent. And we've been talking about this show for a couple weeks now, how Memphis, Chicago, and even now Oklahoma City have all been making attempts to trade up to draft Klingon. Klingon has a chance to go #1 overall. In fact, I think if Atlanta does what head coach Quinn Snyder wants, they will probably take Klingon #1 overall. Assuming that Rizache ends up being the pick there and then Sarr becomes #2. At 3, Houston is not a fit for Klingon. They already have Alperen Sengun. They have the same agent. Donovan Klingon is not going to play for Houston, but Houston has been known to entertain trading offers, and Memphis is a team that is very aggressively trying to move up. One thing that was very interesting earlier today at media availability in Brooklyn is Donovan Klingon said he worked out for 5 different teams, but he declined to say exactly who those teams are. You can do some very quick math and figure out who's got young starting centers in that top 7, and there aren't 5 of them, which means that Donovan Klingon worked out for someone outside of the top 7, presumably because they have a chance to move up, because there's no one who thinks he will get past Portland at 7. So it seems, based on what Klingon said today, that he worked out for another team. I am projecting that Memphis would be the team with the best chance to trade up to get him, with Houston potentially being a ideal trade partner at 3.
With the 4th pick in the NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select out of Kentucky guard Reed Sheppard.
Okay, again, we're going on the intel here. Reed Sheppard has a very good chance, if Houston keeps that pick at 3, to be off the board at this point in time. If Houston trades that pick, I think this makes a lot of sense for San Antonio. San Antonio has Victor Wembanyama, a generational talent, the first pick in last year's draft. What they need more than anything else around Wemby is floor spacing, and that means shooting. Reed Sheppard shot over 52% from the three-point line last year and was in the 98th or better percentile in essentially every shooting metric measured, whether that's contested shots, open spot-up shots, or overall jump shots. So he is an elite shooter of the basketball. He's also an elite competitor, terrific for culture, exceeded all expectations this year at Kentucky, and measured with the highest vertical leap at the NBA Combine, which admittedly was yet another surprise that Reed Sheppard threw out to anyone who has doubted him in the last year.
With the 5th pick in the NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons select out of G League Ignite forward Matas Buzelis.
So again, here's why this is interesting. We don't really know what Detroit's going to do. Trajan Langdon is the new GM over there. And they just fired a head coach in Monty Williams who had $65 million left on his contract. So I repeat, they gave him $65 million to go home. No one was anticipating that. Buzelis is a player that would make sense given the current construction of their roster. But we don't know what Trajan Langdon thinks of their roster. So this is a pick that not only I have made, but a lot of others have mocked, and it's almost become like groupthink. But I think it's very possible that Detroit throws some sort of wild card here that could have dominoes. I will say this for Buzelis. He's got good size, he's got versatile ball skills, and a significant upside, great personality. So I do think he would fit there next to Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, and those guys. But again, we don't know what Trajan Langdon values, and this is his first decision that he's making all for himself, so it could be something we are not anticipating.
With the 6th pick, the Charlotte Hornets select out of UConn guard Stephon Castle.
Conventional wisdom right now out of Charlotte is that they will be picking either a 4-man or a 2-man. They like Mark Williams, they like Brandon Miller, and they like LaMelo Ball as their long-term building blocks, leaving those 2 holes in the lineup at the 2 and the 4. Castle would be a really good fit because he is one of the better perimeter defenders in this class, which is known to be a liability of Ball, so he would compensate there. And while Ball has been somewhat injury-prone, Castle also has some on-off ball versatility, so meaning he can play alongside Ball, or if Ball's off the lineup, you give Castle the ball and let him initiate offense. So it makes a lot of sense on a couple different levels, but I will also say that Charlotte could be another team that moves this pick. I have Houston projected to move theirs, but if Houston takes Reed Sheppard and nobody moves it in the top 5, you're going to see those teams like Memphis, Chicago, and OKC then target Charlotte as a trade partner to move up and take Donovan Klingon.
With the 7th pick in the NBA draft, the Portland Trailblazers select out of Colorado guard Cody Williams.
So here's what I'm thinking here. Mike Schmitz, who was at one time a colleague of mine at ESPN, is 2 years into being the assistant GM and has a lot of autonomy, perceived autonomy in the draft process. They've gone big game hunting the last 2 years. Shaedon Sharpe back in 2022, and then Scoot Henderson last year. Neither one of those guys has hit to quite the same extent. But I think what we've seen is that this franchise has an appetite to star hunt in the lottery. And Cody Williams, while he is one of the higher risk, higher reward prospects in this draft, he does have a significant upside. He's got good wing size. great length. He's ultra smooth. I mean, this guy just floats on the court. And he shot over 41% from the three-point line. He's also the younger brother of Jalen Williams, who's a late bloomer, who's become an all-star caliber player for OKC. So there's that path that people hope he'll follow. And I could see Portland taking a swing on him here.
With the 8th pick in the NBA draft, the San Antonio Spurs select out of Tennessee guard Dalton Knecht.
Somewhat counterintuitive because I went with Reed Sheppard up front, but remember, I think spacing is the primary objective in San Antonio for San Antonio's front office this offseason. If you believe Reed Sheppard is your point guard of the future, Dalton Knecht gives you another shot maker, both off the catch and the dribble, a movement shooter, as you see here, someone who can open your playbook by coming off screens, and has, in conjunction with Sheppard, extreme gravity, really opening up the lane for Wemby. The downside of these two will be what they will be as a defensive tandem, but it doesn't hurt to have that generational shot blocker sitting there behind.
With the 9th pick, this is, again, the mock trade from Memphis, so the Houston Rockets now on the clock, and they will select out of France forward Tajon Salon.
Yes, and very good job pronunciating that. I've struggled for weeks now. Salon is one of my favorites in this draft. He's still just 18 years old. He doesn't turn 19 until August. This guy has got a tremendous body type. I mean, he's ripped physically, and he's just going to keep on getting bigger. He's got a great motor. On top of that, he's got some flashes of skill here. He can really cut off the ball. Made 73s this year in the French league. And I think there are just really high upside outcomes for him that make him worth the risk here. So again, a prospect that I am personally higher on than most. But when you look at the potential scenarios of what Houston could be looking for, next to Sengun, a physical specimen like this makes a lot of sense.
With the 10th pick in the draft, the Utah Jazz select out of Providence guard Devin Carter.
So let me tell you a little story. A few years back, when Danny Ainge was running the organization called the Boston Celtics, he drafted a guy named Marcus Smart. It was a mid-lottery pick. Marcus Smart was an elite competitor, athletic guard who can play on and off the ball and got it done defensively. I see a ton of parallels between Marcus Smart and Devin Carter. And I actually think Devin Carter's upside could be higher than what we've seen from Smart, although he has been a starter in this league for a long time. So I think this makes a lot of sense. Ron Holland would also be something that I think would be consistent with what we've seen from Ainge's philosophy over the years. But Devin Carter, another one of my personal favorites in this draft, would make a lot of sense for the Jazz.
All right, let's go ahead and recap those top 10 picks. 3 prospects out of France. I've been working on those names. Let's hope the real commissioner, Adam Silver, has as well. You see the 2 names highlighted, Donovan Clingan and Tajon Salon, 2 prospects a lot of people really excited about. Also, we have a trade here. That is what the mock trade is signaling. But as you heard Fink, there could potentially be more trades coming in the top 10 picks and beyond. Speaking of beyond, let's go there. With the 11th pick in the NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls select out of Duke guard Jared McCain.
Yeah, Jared McCain, an Isaac Trotter favorite. Shout out to my 24/7 colleague there. Here's what happened in Chicago. They switched Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey, although he has the size of a wing, basically operates like a point guard. He needs the ball in his hands to create for himself and others. And as we saw in OKC, he's not a great shooter. So Chicago can't draft a non-shooting wing. That knocks out somebody like like Ron Holland. What they need is a floor spacer, and Jared McCain does that as well as anyone. He's a high character guy. He's just got a ton of charisma. I think Chicago fans will like him, and when you insert him around Josh Giddey and Kobe White, I think that backcourt for Chicago starts to make some sense. They can potentially look to move off guys like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan and finally begin to rebuild in Chicago.
With the 12th pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select out of Serbia guard Nikola Topic.
Nikola Topic was a top 5 prospect in this draft before coming up with his most recent knee injury. And that knee injury, the ACL specifically, could require surgery. If that surgery happens, it's a good bet he misses all of next season. That means that you're not going to get an immediate return on this investment. Quite frankly, Emily, there are some teams and specifically some executives that can't afford to wait because not everybody has the same amount of job security. In OKC, Sam Presti not only has unlimited job security because of his resume to date, but he's got a war chest of future assets, which means he can afford to not only take a risk on a high upside prospect like Topic, but he can also afford to wait because he's got a contender already built next year. We saw him do it with Chet Holmgren, albeit not by design. And last year, this was a team that was up around the top of the Western Conference, is only expected to get better as they get older. So they can afford to let Topic have the procedure and take his time to rehab this right. And if it hits down the road, you have another big guard who can get paint touches, potentially step right in for where Giddey was prior to the trade.
With the 13th pick in the NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings select out of G League Ignite forward Ron Holland.
This is my guy in this draft. He was the #1 high school player in the country last year. With Ignite this year, he averaged over 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. And for some reason, his stock is dropping. To be clear, I would be considering Ron Holland in the top half of the lottery. If he slips to 13, I think it would be a huge win for Sacramento. Sacramento is coming off another huge win last week when they re-signed Malik Monk. So previously, I thought they might look for a guard here, somebody like Jared McCain to step in for Monk. But with Monk back in the mix, Holland would give them an opportunity to pair him with Keegan Murray, give them a defensive-oriented wing that they really lack right now. And now you've got that forward wing tandem to build off of for the foreseeable future, along, obviously, the 1-2 punch of Sabonis and Fox.
With the 14th pick, final pick in the lottery as well, the Portland Trailblazers will select out of Purdue center Zach Edey.
Okay, time for more intel. So, talked about how Donovan Clingan won't slip past Portland at 7. Obviously, if they get Clingan, they will not draft Edey. But Portland is one of several teams, including Memphis and others, who are targeting both Clingan and Edey, meaning if they don't get Clingan, Edey is the backup plan. So I think for Portland, if they get somebody like Williams at 7, it would not surprise me at all to see them take a shot on Zach Edey, who's been the most dominant player in college basketball in each of the last 2 seasons. He's a little bit of a polarizing NBA prospect, but the people who like him really believe in his upside, and Portland needs a center because DeAndre Ayton does not look like the long-term answer there. And as I said, Zach Edey, that you're hearing increasing lottery buzz in the days and now hours leading up to draft night.
With the 15th pick in the NBA draft, the Miami Heat select out of Kentucky guard Rob Dillingham.
All right, so what I'm hearing out of Miami is that they are looking for the most talented perimeter player on the board. They're looking at guys like Jared McCain, Jacoby Walter, Bub Carrington, and Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham is as dynamic with the basketball as any player in this class, both as a handler and a shooter. Now, he couldn't guard me or you, and physically, he's got a long way to go. As it was revealed in the pre-draft process, 164 is not what you want to see in terms of weight for a potential lottery pick. But you were talking about one of the most established cultures in the NBA, and if they think they can get him to buy into what they do on an everyday basis, now you've got some significant high upside outcomes that become possible for someone like Rob Dillingham, who, again, is as talented with the basketball as anyone in this draft.
May not be able to guard me, Adam Silver, but definitely me, Emily Proud. I can guarantee you that. With the 16th pick, back into character, the Philadelphia 76ers will select out of Colorado forward Tristan da Silva.
Tristan da Silva is the ultimate plug-and-play guy, meaning you can throw him into the lineup at almost every position, and he's very reliable. He may never be a star, probably won't ever be a star, but he can space the floor, he can make good, simple decisions with the basketball, he can make open shots, and he can be adequate defensively. At Philadelphia, you've got a scenario where basically they have Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and then a whole lot of question marks. So Da Silva offers someone who can give you rotation minutes, even in my opinion, in a playoff setting, and a lot of flexibility as you that rotation.
With the 17th pick in the NBA draft, the Los Angeles Lakers will select out of Baylor center Yves Missi.
No, it's supposed to be Bronny James. No. Yves Missi is an athletic big. Think Derek Lively in this one. He rim runs. He's a lob threat. He protects the rim as a shot blocker. He reclassed up, actually. He was initially only supposed to be a freshman in college this year, but he went to Baylor a year earlier than he was previously listed. He exceeded expectations. I think he's got a chance to go in the lottery. But this is a guy who has a clear archetype and niche in the modern NBA. And I think as you look, as the Lakers try and figure out like what the next few years look like, they have to start to find pieces of their long-term future while still trying to maximize the LeBron years as much as they can.
With the 18th pick, the Orlando Magic will select out of Pittsburgh guard Carlton Bub Carrington.
Yeah, Bub won't go past 20. I think he is Cleveland is his floor in my opinion, but you could see him go as high as Portland, Miami, OKC. All of those teams are intrigued with him because this is a late blooming guard who really exceeded all expectations this year at Pittsburgh. He's a great pull-up shooter. And just the rate of improvement really stands out. This was a 4-star prospect in high school who went to Pittsburgh and blew up right away in the college season and has continued to impress executives and scouts in the pre-draft process. So again, it's a little bit of it's a high upside play. He's got a chance to be very good down the road, but it's going to take some patience. I think for Orlando, where they've taken a lot of swings on guards over the years that quite frankly haven't hit. They've got Jalen Suggs, who is a defender. Bub Carrington could give him a running mate in the years to come. When you look at like Markelle Fultz, Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, all these guys they've invested in the last couple of years. And Suggs is really still the only one who looks like a permanent solution in the backcourt.
With the 19th pick, the Toronto Raptors select out of Miami guard Keyshawn George.
So Keyshawn George was one of the first players to get a green room invite, and this was surprising to a lot of people because he came in as a freshman from Europe. He averaged about 7 points per game last year. Now, his aesthetic is really intriguing because he's a late bloomer who grew late in his high school years. He's got a smooth shooting stroke, which you can see. He made over 40% of them last year, and he's just very fluid when he covers the court. But again, the overall metrics, I mean, you can see those numbers there. That's not what you typically associate with a first-round pick, especially on a team that wasn't very good, quite frankly. It's not like he put up those numbers in a supporting role on a team that was winning. This was a team that largely underachieved relative to expectations. So he's a player that's going to be really interesting. But what I've been told most recently is that he had a very good workout in Toronto. And Masai Ujiri is reportedly very intrigued, has connections to George's camp. And so this, to me, is if you believe George is going in the first round after that green room invite, this is my best guess as to his landing spot.
With the 20th pick in the NBA draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select out of Duke center Kyle Filipowski.
So what you got going on in Cleveland right now is a potential changing of the guards. They're trying to get Donovan Mitchell re-signed because he's a true NBA star. Then they're trying to figure out, do he and Darius Garland fit together in the backcourt? Similarly, up front, they're asking themselves if Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley fit together. If the answer is no to that latter question up front, Filipowski provides an insurance policy because he can play with either one of those two guys. If you move off Mobley, Filipowski can slide in at the 4 next to Jarrett Allen. If you move Jarrett Allen and use Mobley primarily at the 5, Filipowski can play alongside him. He can play 4 or 5. He's a skilled big, and really, I think there with shoes on, he's a fringe 7-footer, and there just aren't many guys his size who can dribble, pass, and shoot. So I think he's got a pretty high floor in the NBA and would be a good fit for Cleveland.
All right, let's take a pause to recap picks 11 through 20, and I'm dubbing this one the big man group. A lot of big centers that you saw dominate the college game last year, like Zach Edey and the aforementioned Kyle Filipowski. Adam saying on Edey, got a lot of upside, but definitely a polarizing figure. Let's keep rolling on with the 21st pick in the NBA draft. The New Orleans Pelicans will select out of Indiana center Khalil Ware.
Speaking of polarizing, they don't get more polarizing than Khalil Ware. This has been the story since high school because the tools have been obvious. He's got terrific size, he's got soft hands, got great touch that extends out to the 3-point line. He can run, he can jump. In terms of just basketball tools, he checks almost every box. But there's been a disconnect, quite frankly, that's dated back to high school about How hard does he play? How physical is he willing to be? This is someone who has said out loud at one point that he wasn't sure how much he loved basketball. Now, he showed tremendous growth this year at Indiana, but you really have to have a team that's willing to bet on his maturation and continued development, and just in terms of how much he loves the game and is willing to commit himself to it. If and when that ever happens, the upside, though, is significant because, as I said, he's got every tool in the book.
With the 22nd pick in the NBA draft, the Phoenix Suns select out of Baylor guard Jacoby Walter.
So this is going to be an interesting one. I think Phoenix, they've got Kevin Durant, they've got Devin Booker, they've got Bradley Beal, and they are really locked in from a financial salary cap perspective. So I think they'd probably rather get someone who's a plug-and-play guy, can step right in. I've been told, although I think Baylor Shireman would make a lot of sense, that maybe there's not as much traction there. Jacoby Walter is the second one-and-done player to come out of Baylor in this mock. He's a wing who's a plus athlete, a good shooter, as you see, tools to be a productive defender. So while he's a bit of a work in progress and maybe not as far along as Phoenix needs to build out that supporting cast around their big three next year, I could see them just saying, you know what, he's too talented at 22 for us to pass on.
With the 23rd pick in the NBA draft, the Milwaukee Bucks select out of Kansas guard Johnny Furphy.
Yeah, Furphy was originally not even supposed to be in college last year. He was going to go back to the NBA Academy. He ends up at Kansas after a late commitment in the summer, comes off the bench to start the season, then gets inserted into the starting lineup midway through the year and just really exceeds expectations. What I like about Furphy is just the trajectory in terms of the rate of his development over the last 2 years. Again, wasn't even supposed to be in college last year. He's got good wing size. He's a high character kid. He shoots the ball well. He gets out in transition. And when you look at this Milwaukee team, this is Giannis, and then everybody else in the starting lineup is 30 plus years old. So they've got to figure out what the next iteration of their Giannis team looks like. And Furphy gives them a floor spacer with wing size who could grow into a nice complementary piece.
With the 24th pick in the draft, the New York Knicks select out of Marquette guard Tyler Kolek.
So there's a lot of people who think Phoenix is going to take Kolek. Let me tell you why. It's because Kolek's dad, Mark Bartelstein, his son Josh Bartelstein is an executive with Phoenix. I think that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit and not necessarily the real intel. There's a lot of people who think Milwaukee will take Kolek because Marquette plays in the Bucks arena, so they've gotten to see him more than anyone. What I believe is that the Knicks are higher on Kolek than anyone. I think that even though they have Deuce McBride, who stepped in and became a valuable backup last year behind Jalen Brunson, that they would be thrilled to get Kolek here. Arguably the best point guard in college basketball last season. Just as competitive and smart as you get. He's a savage, quite frankly. I mean, in the most complimentary way possible. And that's just such a good fit with Tibbs and the Knicks that this would make a lot of sense.
The Knicks still on the clock for the 25th pick, and they will select out of Virginia forward Ryan Dunn.
So again, this one is intel-based. I think if the Knicks get Kolek and Dunn, they would walk away feeling very good about it. Ryan Dunn was one of the best defenders in all of college basketball next year, and so it's not surprising that the Knicks are higher on him than most. Tom Thibodeau, a defensive-oriented coach, probably the most old-school coach in the NBA. The big question with Dunn is the shooting. If he can get to the point where he can make a standstill three, there's some very positive 3-and-D outcomes. Even without it, I think one aspect of his game that didn't get recognized enough last year at Virginia was how explosive he can be in transition because Virginia played at a slower tempo. So this would be a really good fit for the Knicks and for Ryan Dunn.
With the 26th pick, the Washington Wizards will select out of USC, guard Isaiah Collier.
Yeah, and then there's a chance he's off the board as early as 16. But Collier, who was one of the best players in the national high school class of 2023 a year ago, would have a great opportunity here because Washington does not have their point guard of the future. They do not have a young asset at the point. Realistically, they're also not going to be very good next year, maybe even the year after that. So Collier, who's a big power guard and a really gifted passer, would have an opportunity to show that he can earn that spot of being their point guard of the future. So if he falls to 26, although I'm sure he'd like to go higher, I think this would really be a good situation for him.
With the 27th pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves will select out of Creighton guard Baylor Shireman.
Baylor Shireman, one of the best plug-and-play players in this draft, the lefty forward who really did a tremendous job of changing his body going into his final season at Creighton. A known shooter from behind the three-point line, was put in positions where he was asked to be a primary creator pretty frequently in his college career. But in the NBA, he's going to play a different role. He's going to be the guy that after the star breaks down the defense and you need somebody to make a quick decision with the ball, Baylor Shireman is ideal for that role because he sees the game at a really high level. He's a quick processor, a smart passer, and he makes open shots. I think defensively he's improved a lot because of the gains he's shown physically. So for a Minnesota team that now looks like they're going to be a contender for the foreseeable future behind a budding star in Anthony Edwards, adding Baylor Shireman to your supporting cast makes sense.
With the 28th pick in the NBA draft, the Denver Nuggets select out of Dayton forward Deron Holmes II.
So credit where credit is due. Holmes is a player that declared for the draft last year, didn't get the feedback he wanted, went back to Dayton, and then really improved his game. Became a three-point shooter for the first time, has always been known as an athletic big man prior to that. I'm told that he will not get past the Nuggets. The Denver, who has a history under Calvin Booth of trying to find rotation players and the salary spots designated for late first-round picks, really likes Holmes and believes he can add to their front court depth and versatility. So I do not expect Holmes to get past this point, and it would be easy to see why the Nuggets would view him as a valuable addition to their front line behind Nikola Jokic.
With the 29th pick in the NBA draft, the Utah Jazz select out of Minnesota guard Cam Christie.
This is just my best guess, Emily, to be totally honest. I mean, this is a freshman who exceeded expectations. He's a shooter, the younger brother of Max Christie on the LA Lakers. Utah, again, Danny Ainge, an executive who is not averse to taking big swings on high upside prospects. I think with Christie's rate of improvement, he's someone that could really pan out long term. Positional size, shooting. We've seen his brother develop into a solid NBA player, and I think Cam Christie maybe even has a higher upside, although that was not necessarily the perception when they were younger.
With the final pick of the first round, it belongs to the NBA champs, Boston Celtics. They will select out of G League Ignite forward Tyler Smith.
So I can tell you this, the Celtics will not take a non-shooter. If you watch Joe Mazzulla's team play, you know he puts a tremendous emphasis on three-point shooting and spacing the floor, and this has got to be a shooter. If Baylor Shireman is here, Brad Stevens will run to the podium. If not, Tyler Smith is an option because in an aging Celtics front court, Smith provides a potential replacement as someone who can stretch the floor as a stretch four, maybe even a stretch five. But I also think it's very possible that the Celtics move off this pick as they did last year and try and turn one asset into multiple assets, even if that's trading off of 30 and getting multiple second-round picks in exchange.
Also, apparently quite the bowler, too. Tough for him to find shoes at 16 and a half. Yeah, you're not the only one with some intel. There we go. Let's go ahead and recap those last third picks there. And you heard Adam say earlier, the Knicks, with 2 picks there, smack dab in the middle. If they end up with Kolek and Dunn, they will be, quote, very happy about it. So there you have it, the first round mock, the final one. That means this one is in Sharpie. We both made our jokes, had our references, of course, to Bronny James. He is not going here in your first round, but the Lakers, they do select 55th overall in the second round. So give me the pulse right now. Where do you expect Bronny James to fall?
Here's the thing. LeBron has started telling us 3 years ago that he wanted to play with Bronny. He repeated it multiple times. This is not a man who says things by accident. So even though they've tried to walk that back in the last weeks and months, I mean, this was going on as recently as during the season. It's also lined up, coincidentally, or perhaps not, with LeBron's own free agency. LeBron hasn't re-signed yet. He's on the verge of signing a 3-year, $160 million deal. So if you're making that type of investment on the NBA's all-time leading scorer, what's the 55th pick in the draft? So yeah, I think Bronny will be on the Lakers. The only way he doesn't get picked 55 is I think if the Lakers move up a little bit higher in the second round, just to avoid any potential for something unexpected to happen. But he only worked out for 2 teams. That was by design from his representation. They said out loud that he won't accept a 2-way contract, which means he wants a fully guaranteed NBA deal. And quite frankly, I'm not sure there's anybody else that would give him that. And beyond that, even if there was, I just don't think there's going to be another organization that's going to risk alienating Clutch, which is one of the most powerful agencies in all of basketball, when clearly the design here is to get to Bronny with LeBron, like LeBron has told us repeatedly for the last 3 years.
So in an ideal world, this all works out. LeBron plays with his son, Bronny. Adam, what does Bronny refer to his dad as on the court? Does he say, "Hey, Dad, pass me the ball"? How does that work?
Yeah, that's I haven't thought of that one. And I've asked a lot of Bronny questions in the last couple of months, but it was interesting. At the Combine, somebody asked him who his favorite NBA player was, and he hesitated for about 5 seconds, and he's like, LeBron James. Now, I will say, Bronny he's an incredibly impressive young man when you get him in these settings where he speaks to the media. I mean, really, really impressive. With the amount of the microscope he's been under over the years and what he's had to go through with that cardiac arrest this past summer, that I think is the thing we don't talk enough about. Like, everybody's like, oh, he wouldn't be in the NBA, and that all may be true. But he's an impressive young man and carries himself in an impressive way, and I think that's at least worth mentioning.
Oh, yeah, especially with the way that he grew up. He has every right to feel like a superstar growing up in that household. That question, of course, is not, don't give me credit for it. That is courtesy of our producer, Kenny Williams. He just lays awake at night thinking of other Bronny James-related questions to ask, which I'm sure you lay awake at night thinking about a similar thing, Adam, with how much...
I made a couple takes at the Wizards, so hopefully there's another show next week. We'll have to see.
Yes, hopefully Kenny will, the Washington Wizards fan, will forgive you for that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We do appreciate you rolling through that mock draft. You can see the full mock draft on CBSSports.com along with Adam's analysis for each pick. Plus, there is much more NBA draft coverage right there on CBSSports.com. Also, be sure to check out 24/7 Sports Live on Thursday right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Adam will make an appearance talking about some top 10 prospects for next year. That's right, it is already time to turn the page. But that'll do it for 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show. For Adam Finkelstein, I'm Emily Proud. Thanks for watching.